playing the song. And then about 32 bars into the song, I start playing it. Then Randy comes, like, they had frowns on their faces. I'm like, oh man, I must be screwing it up. I'm thinking to myself, must be screwing up. They're frowning and stuff. And they're looking at each other like in disbelief. And I said, man, I must be, what am I doing wrong? I'm sure I had the beat right. But then Randy comes around and starts looking around the drum set, my hi-hat, my snare, and looking at me, and looking at Jackie and Marlon, and they're looking back at me like...
In other words, this dude, how is he playing this?
I didn't know that.
They thought you probably had some kind of click machine or something. You snuck in there.
I'm thinking he's saying, see, you messing this beat up. So, because I didn't know I was, So Randy said, no, stop. And I stopped. I said, what's wrong? What's wrong? I'm doing something wrong? And Randy said, no. He wouldn't say what at first. And he said, Foot, play that again. Play that beat again. So I started playing it, at normal tempo. He said, no, play it slow. I'm like, what's going on? And to myself, I'm saying, what's going on? Am I really screwing it up that bad? So I started playing it, really slow. And there's elements of the hi-hat does a tricky pattern. And then you got to sneak your arm under that hi-hat and then hit the one time, and then hit the other time, and then come back.
Let me ask, this is a good question to ask then. Was that song, you think that song was actually overdubbed? I forget the drummer's name who played on it. Ed Greene, who did all the Barry White stuff, Can't Get Enough of Your Love, and the Mac Brothers Gonna Work It Out. Ed Greene is bad.
Amazing.
He's a monster.
Some music history.
Yeah, for sure. Was that song overdubbed, or did he really play that like that?
That is the trick. In my mind, when I heard that song on record, I said, this guy is playing it on the record. I gotta play it like that on the record. If he can play it on the record,
did he? But so he didn't know. He actually didn't. He didn't overdub it.
Little did I know, that's what Randy was looking for. How is he playing? How is Sugarfoot playing this beat? And it is not only an overdub; it's a 3-part overdub. It was overdubbed 3 tracks. He played the basic beat, kick and snare. Then they went back on another separate track.
Just ba-boom, ba-boom.
And then they went back and overdubbed the hi-hat on a second track. Then they went back on 2 other tracks and overdubbed the time tracks separately.
Yeah.
And when you hear it back, you got the whole thing chugging along. But at my house, when I put that needle on the record, all I heard was everything playing at the same time, so I figured this guy is playing it. I got to learn it like that. That's an incredible beat. I got to learn it because he's doing it, I can do it. So I took the time out to figure out where the hands had to cross, not to drop any beats of the hi-hat off, not to drop any beats of the snare off, or the kick drum other times. So I mechanically sat there and pictured how he had to do it to make all of this stuff happen at one time.
When did they finally tell you that you actually had the gig? Was it at that point like, you know what, this is your gig?
Well, it was right after that point where Randy asked me to do it slow. And he said, no. He started laughing. And I said, what's wrong? And he said, no. And the whole place erupted. The band, the rest of the brothers erupted in laughter. I'm like, oh man, I must have really screwed up. I said, what's wrong? He said, no, you don't understand. That was a 3-part overdub. The drummer on the record played 3 parts, 3 passes to make that beat happen. Here you're playing it all at one time without missing anything. And I said, really? He didn't play it all at one time? And I was in shock because I could play it all at one time. And they were in shock because nobody was supposed to be able to play it. And that's when he said, oh no, you're our drummer. And Randy put his hand on my shoulder and said, you're our drummer now. We want you. And then he said, let me play it. And then he went to play it. Got on the set, and that's my first time hearing Randy play. Randy can play, but he's left-handed. He started playing it, but the way he did it in crossing, some of the hi-hat beats would be missing. Then I showed him how I did it, and you don't miss anything. So he was like, wow, that's amazing, you figured that out. So he said, no, you're our drummer. And that's when one of the brothers said, yeah, he looked like us too, like the family.
Off the record, and this is something personal I've never told you, but to me, I've always felt like, there's Jackie, Michael, Marlon, Tito, Jermaine, and Randy, but I've always felt like deep down, and I'm not trying to blow smoke up your rear, I've always felt like they've had 3 other brothers, which was Ronnie Ransford, Johnny, and yourself. And, we'll get to that a little bit later on, but I thought about you a lot when that situation really went down with Mike. Like I said, I want to save that for last. What was the experience like when you guys first like really went out on the road? What was the vibe? Had you really still gotten over like, okay, I got this gig, now I'm gonna solidify it where can't nobody play this gig, or where were you at?
No, I just was happy and elated that all of a sudden my life was thrust into the professional world of music. We're one of the greatest group and the most historic groups in the history of music. And here I am, all of a sudden, by getting lost on a freeway, finding the music director I've been looking for, I'm in the band and playing drums for Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5.
How long did the first leg, okay, the Destiny tour lasted with you, how long would you say? The leg that you were on?
About 3 months.
Okay.
2.5, 3 months. But we started off, and go back, I actually only had 3 days to learn the whole show. My first professional gig ever, I had to learn everything in 3 days.
Do you think that gig kind of primed you like for the next tour, like Off the Wall and Triumph and all that stuff?
Sure, it primed me for all of that, and it primed me for working under pressure. Because the first professional tour ever, and you have to play with one of the most professional groups in the world, and without making mistakes, and all the added things that I wasn't used to doing. All the hits and breaks under their command, and things I had to learn on the spot and on the fly in 3 days. And stuff. So it was a big challenge, but like I said before, I told myself, you can't get nervous. If you get nervous, you're going to make mistakes. If you make mistakes, you will not be here.
Let's get to some music from the Victory Tour. This is from Chicago. Hey everybody, welcome back to Soul School, joined by legendary drummer Jonathan Sugarfoot Moffett. And I have to give an apology over the air before we get to the last part of this show. And something I've never told you off the record, whenever I would see Jonathan and, we would be in San Jose or wherever it may be, Jonathan was convinced, and man, I thought you were out of your mind, that the Jacksons were going to get back together. I mean, he would have you, and I was just saying, I don't think them cats are ever going to get together and play again. Maybe a special or something, but I was just thinking Michael has kind of moved on. Not that he wouldn't want to gig with his brothers, but I just think that he was totally somewhere else, and sometimes you kind of, and he ended up evolving into unprecedented heights, that we've never seen, not even with James Brown and other different people. He just was gone somewhere else. His star went somewhere else. But whenever I would see you, man, you would say, man, the brothers are going to get together and they're going to gig. And I was saying, man, I just don't see it. And nobody was happier that you got that gig than I was, because I said, boy, Jonathan wanted that gig so bad. He waited so long, so many years, and I just really didn't see it happening. And the history tour, of course, the history tour, we didn't really get over here, overseas and just different places. And then I knew Ricky Lawson had played, the Bad Tour or whatever. And, I wanted it for you, but I just didn't see that happening. And so, boy, when I found out that they got that, that you got the gig, I was on the phone with just different people. I was saying, wow. I said, the brothers, I said, not so much the brothers going, I said, Jonathan got the gig with Michael. Not that I didn't think you could get that gig, but I was just really, really happy. And I know I've spent a lot of time on it, but I was like really, really happy for you. How did you get the call for the This Is It gig? Who actually, was it management, or did Michael call you, or how did all of that go down towards the end?
Well, actually, I had known that I was up for it for some time, maybe a year before, because from people inside the camp started mentioning that Michael thinks like he may go on tour, and the only two people that he wanted and mentioned for certain he wanted to have was me and David Williams. And he didn't know anything about the rest.
Yeah, God rest his soul. David Williams has passed on now, you guys. He great session guitar player. He's been with Mike for a very, very long time. He just passed away not too long ago. I don't want to not mention him. He's a great human being also.
Yeah, actually he passed away 3 months before Mike. So he waited, like I did, 13 years for this tour. He and I waited together. We talked all the time. Every week we talk, multiple times a week, and excited about knowing it was coming up. And he was one of the ones who told me that my name was up for it as well. as somebody else close with Michael, very close, right, but with Michael most of the time, that Michael would always mention he's got to have me and David. Those was his core to build a band on. So we get to a day or so before Michael makes the announcement in London, and David passes after waiting 13 years. So it was devastating. It was first devastation of 2009 for me, because David and I were so close. We were like brothers as well.
Me and George were just hanging out with him too. He had came up to the Bay Area. Tito had played up at Kimball's East, and you don't see him in the background with George Livingston. We were just with him and Mike McKinney them at Kimball's. As a matter of fact, I taped the sound check and stuff. It's just, so when I heard about it, I just kind of like, wow, this was, I would have never known what was going to follow.
Yeah, I was destroyed when I heard about him, and I just talked to him like 2 to 3 days before, and he seemed fine. So that was the first devastation, hurt, and pain. And Michael was hurt by it too when he found out, when he was on his way to London, or arrived in London, they told him, and he was devastated as well. So, so I kind of knew all along for almost a year that I was the one Michael wanted me. So, but I didn't get an official call until April 15th. The call came from AEG, the company and the firm that was promoting the tour. So they called me up and said, Michael wants you on the tour, and we want to have you. Got to talk about contracts and monies and everything, but we need you at rehearsals right away. So after that call on the 15th, my drums and myself was at the rehearsal facility on the 16th, the very next day. They came and got all my equipment, and I went down there to set up. We wound up not setting up that day, but I stayed there the whole day.
Now, was this at the Forum first, or was it another facility before the Forum?
That was before the Forum. That was at Center Staging, one of the small rooms.
Okay.
And the band getting ready to set up in the small room. Dancers had a bigger room, working with Michael and everything. And the singers were in a different location. And the dancers, when I say the dancers had a bigger room, it was Michael and the head choreographer and some of the dancers. But then the dancers also rehearsed in a different room at another location. So the background singers had their room. So I went in there on the 16th. And then we had to audition other band members the rest of that month of April of 2009. By May 1st, we had a band. So the official real rehearsals began around the beginning of May 1st. And we rehearsed all of May. And then the 3 weeks of June until Michael passed on the 25th. So it was a time in my life that, etched in both good times and some of the most horrible times in my life. Etched in both good times and some of the most horrible times in my life. And
I've been praying for you, Jonathan, man. Not to get too personal on this show, because, like I said, I know what that gig meant to you, just from the outside. But even deeper than that, for us, like I said, you could be the biggest Jackson fan, and I wouldn't even have a show, if I didn't have a broom trying to be Tito and stuff like that. Early on, watching the cartoon, the Rats and all of that kind of stuff. But for you, you were an official family member, man. You lost a brother.
That's what it is.
That's what it was.
Most people don't think of that, but for me, more than half of my life was spent with Michael and the brothers. 30 years that I was associated with Michael. Now it's 32 years as I still work with Jermaine. 32 years that I've been out here. And on the 21st, it's just tomorrow. How ironic. Is the day I auditioned for the Jacksons. 21st of February, 1979.
Well, you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, man, because it's not. How are you like right now? Have you, I'm sure you probably will never get over, but how have you been? I mean, because I watched you tonight, and I had the benefit of watching you and sound checking, man. I'll tell you, I'm looking, man. You always come with the force, but it's kind of like you done went from being Obi-Wan and Anakin to being Yoda, man. you were definitely the Jedi Council tonight on the drums, man.
Thank you.
Yeah. So but underneath all of that, man, how are you holding up, man?
I'm pretty good now. You know, I've come to somewhat of acceptance of things. This is the reality of it.